morning, everybody. It's Jean here, Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You. This is a tutorial which is part 3 of me showing you how I am making my little mock cathedral windows table topper. This is the little table topper that I had made a while ago. The way I had done this was a lot, as you can see, I had used a lot of multicolored fabrics and batik fabrics, okay? Now the one I'm making now, which I've demonstrated in part 1 and part 2 up to that point, is also multicolor and solid fabrics and print fabrics, but it's going to end up a little bit different because, as we saw in part 2, if you're watching, our fabric placement is important to make this multicolor, less than traditional cathedral windows project. Now again, in parts 1 and 2, I was showing you this more traditional method of, or this traditional colorway, I should say, of making this little project with what is, I'm calling the white here, the frames, the frame fabric. I hadn't written down or given you any specific fabric requirements, but for this little project here that I'm making, this is the project that I'm working on now. If you followed in part 1 and part 2, you know that we have 3 fabrics, okay? I'm using 5-inch squares. We have, for this project here, minus the border, which will only take, I don't even think, maybe, what am I looking at here? Maybe half a yard at most for my border. For this project here, that my tutorial on, I'm going to finish it up today, I have used 24 base fabrics. That's the fabrics under here, 24 of them. And as you can see, they're all like a print, soft prints, just like a patchwork. 24, that's 6 across, 4 down. I have used 48 frame fabrics. As you can see, that's my multicolor fabrics, which will just peel back to reveal the base fabrics. These multicolored fabrics are my frame fabrics. I have used 48 5-inch squares. Now I'm to the point where I'm going to be needing my focal fabric. And for my focal fabric, I'm going to be choosing another pattern. So my quilt will be pattern, small little ovals showing under the solid frame fabric, and then another pattern on top for my focal fabric. That for this project, for my 6 blocks across, my 4 blocks down, my 4 rows down, I'm going to be needing 17 focal fabrics. And how I came to that conclusion is, as you can see, we've created squares and then half squares. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 whole squares, and then we have around the edges, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 half squares. I'm still going to be using a full 5-inch square, but it's just going to be cut not quite in half, a little bit more than in half, and I will show you that. So what I've done is I was looking at all of my the collection that I have of my 5-inch squares, charm packs. I've been collecting them for ages, and I have patterned here, as I said, and solid here. So I want pattern. I have chosen this packet of 5-inch squares. This is from Riley Blake, and these are called Flea Market by Lori Holt of Bee in My Bonnet. Now I'm looking at the back. If you don't know, if you're new, these 5-inch squares, which are sometimes called charm squares, have a variety of the one fabric line from this designer, Lori Holt. This is a pre-cuts, is an excellent way to get the entire line of fabrics in a small amount. You can either get charm squares, which are 5-inch squares. You can get fat quarters, which are about 18 by 22-inch pieces of fabric, all of the same. And you can get like jelly rolls, 2.5-inch strips. But it's a nice way, a premium priced way of getting all of the fabrics. Whereas if you had to go and purchase a half a yard of this or half yard of that, which mostly places might cut only half a yard, maybe a quarter of a yard, you're getting a lot of fabric, but you might not have the opportunity to get all of the fabric. So pre-cuts is a very nice way. Again, you pay the price for them, but it's a very convenient way to get all of the fabrics in the fabric line. And I quite like this fabric line. Again, these are the fabrics, some of the fabrics that are in this fabric line. Again, that's Flea Market by Lori Holt of Be In My Bonnet. And the base fabric, I had pulled quite a few random squares from my stash here. But by all means, again, this is a wonderful way to use up scraps. If you have a whole bunch of fabric that you've loved and you've cut it into squares, and again, doesn't matter what size square you use. I'm using 5-inch squares for the base, the frame, and the focal fabrics. I'm using 5-inch squares the whole time, just using 5-inch squares. You could make this quilt or a bigger quilt or a pillow using 4-inch squares, using 6-inch squares, using 2-inch squares. It'd be very, very small, but that is the beauty if you just want to start cutting up your squares. Now I'm going to open this packet and see what I have here. I'm going to, oh, it's so pretty. Very, very pretty. The reason I chose that is because, as you can see, it has all the colors. It has the greens, the blues, the yellows, the pinks, the reds. I really like that. And the whites and the browns. Really nice. So I'm going to just start. I love this one. I think that's so pretty. I'll put that right in the middle there. Then I'll come back here. And I'm just going to pull 17 of these squares here. Oh yeah, I like that one. All right. So I have my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And what I'm just going to do, I'm going to just pin these on. I'm only going to be working one. You don't have to pin them on if you want. You can do this. You could have gone over to your sewing machine and just done one at a time. But I'm just going to pin these on there, right in the middle. You can see that I pinned on my 7 whole squares, my focal fabric squares. That's what I'm going to be taking now over to my sewing machine. I've pinned on these squares in a nice random way. I really like it. I'm at the point over by my machine where I'm sewing down my curved frame pieces here, okay? Now as you can see, you probably can't see actually, but I can feel that there's this great lump right there. There's that great lump of seams right there that we are going to be, when we take this off the machine, I'm going to be cutting out that lump. So my runner here will be laying nice and flat. Everything is just one layer of, except for the frames, everything is just one layer of fabric. So don't be disconcerted when you're stitching this if you find that great lump back there. That's what I was saying in, was it, excuse me, part 1 or part 2, that there is a bit of waste of fabric here. As you can see, our entire frame here, this whole 5-inch square ends up just that much, and the rest of it is going to be cut away here along with our along with our back fabric. But that's okay, because we don't want this great big lump right there. Okay, so don't be disconcerted about that lump there. Everything's going to lay lovely and flat. So I've done 2 of them. I actually have put in I don't know if you in a green and blue and yellow variegated thread. It's sort of showing, it's sort of not. I thought, well, why don't I just make it sort of a feature if you got up close and look at my thread there. So basically you could use any color thread that you want, but this is a nice variegated thread that I'm using. Now, it's very important, very, very important when you come to this point here, that everything is nice and flat. And again, we have lumps here, but when we go to sew this, if you remember in part 2, when we were actually, or part 1, when we were actually securing our frame fabrics, this is a block here. Remember, this is our block. When we were securing our half diagonal folded fabrics, I was trying to emphasize how important it is to go right into the corners with our diagonals. And that is the point, that's the point here where we're going to be folding this frame fabric over. Right up to that point. Now, a couple of these I've noticed, like right there, I didn't do it real well. I didn't do it really well. It's sort of, there was a gap there, and you'll notice that it won't make quite as a nice point, but I'm okay with that. This one here that I've chosen to show you now, I'm doing this one over here, has a fairly decent point right there. They've been into that intersection, quite nice right there. So what the next step is, we're going to take our 5-inch square and we're going to center it, or for me, my focal fabrics here. We're working on this one. I've centered that on the lump, don't worry about that, onto my square, okay? This square that we did. Again, in part 2, I showed you how we've constructed these, how they go, the blocks are laid out row by row to create this square here, okay? So in this square here, with the 4 different frame fabrics, I've laid my 5-inch focal fabric, okay, centered. Now what I'm going to do is, my hands are pretty much in the way, I'm sorry about that. What I'm going to do though, I'm going to, from this point here, from that point there, with this green folded frame fabric, I'm going to roll that over. You will notice this is a raw edge. And what we're doing is we're enclosing our frame fabric inside this we are enclosing our focal fabric inside the rolled frame fabric. We're enclosing this raw edge here, okay? There will be no raw edges showing. The frame fabric will cover it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, because this is on the bias, I'm going to gently sort of audition how far I can roll this frame fabric over from point to point, okay? Now if I roll it too hard, oops, it's pulling. You see that? Oh no, I don't want to do that. If I roll it enough, it won't cover. So just the way it's constructed, we just nudge that over where everything is lovely and flat, smooth, 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 okay? I'm going to put my needle down right in that pointed intersection up there, and very carefully, this is not a marathon here, very carefully I'm going to stitch. It is a bit of a lump, there we go. Very carefully I'm going to stitch that. I'm going to come to that point and I'm going to just, there's no curved stitching, but I'm just going to then shift my fabric ever so slightly so I can follow this curve here. Okay, there's no curved piecing, but what I'm doing is I'm making sure everything is flat. It's not pulled, it's not buckled, it's not stretched in any way. Everything is flat. This bias frame fabric, which since we've pressed it on the diagonal, this is the bias, this is the stretchy bit, which we want this to stretch and to roll right over and enclose that raw fabric, okay? I have an automatic foot lifter upper, so inch by inch I'm just placing, get rid of that thread there, I'm just placing my foot and I'm just guiding my foot right around. Now, with my needle down, always, 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 always needle down. Again, making sure everything's nice and flat. I'm going to come to this point here, and sometimes this first edge will be the one that you want to roll over first. Sometimes you want to audition now about an inch or two above this point here. You want to audition your next frame. Now, where does this frame want to go? Does it want to tuck? Does it want to go over that first one? Oh, I like that. Or does it want to go under that first one? Yeah, maybe I'll put that one under. Do you see that, what I'm talking about? So each corner that we get to is going to be slightly different. This one, I could have gone either way, because actually, if you noticed, I did a really good job here. So I could have gone pretty much either way. But sometimes if your points aren't good enough, which like that one is a little bit off, then this one, then I have to sort of fiddle this to get over. You'll see what I'm saying. You'll see what I'm saying here. But this word I'm working on right here, the pale yellow and the green, I'm going to, let me just see. Now, I'm going to do the green over because it's exactly the same. Now again, everything's straight. It's very, very important. Don't rush this. It's not hard. It's not hard whatsoever. It looks like, you know, my fingers are all moving around. It's not hard. I'm just holding now the yellow and the green. Now I'm getting to that point there with my needle down. I'm just going to shift it because I'm going to make a nice, fairly straight stitching line to this point here, right into the intersection. Okay? Put my needle down. Now I'm going to take my whole table topper here and I'm going to shift it to come back on myself. Okay? And I'm going to secure down my pale yellow frame. Again, you see how that raw edge is just being folded and hidden right in that yellow frame. Now, I am going to have to go on that stitching that I just stitched. So very carefully with my needle down, I'm going to just go right over on that stitching to that point, needle down, and I'm going to shift my fabric, and my presser foot and my needle are now coming to stitch my pale yellow fabric. Stitch by stitch. Just shifting ever so slightly to get your curve. Not pulling anything. I'm just letting that bias edge roll right over nicely. Now again, I'm about 2 inches from the end. I'm going to audition, how do I want my purple fabric here, my purple frame? Is that going to go over? I like that right there. It rolls right over onto my yellow frame. Okay, sometimes it'll be the opposite, but I like that. I'm holding my purple fabric here, not pulling anything. And I'm going to come right to that purple with my needle down. Make it nice and straight in front of me. And stitch right to the point. Needle down. And then I'm going to shift it and I'm going to come back on myself. Now I'm working here on my purple frame fabric. Okay? I'm working here on my purple frame. So I have my needle down. I'm going to come, everything is nice and straight, everything is nice, it's not puffy or anything. I'm holding it, my needle's down. I'm going to come to that point there where I've already stitched, and then I'm going to shift it. And then I'm going to stitch right around on my purple. It's very important that you don't rush this. Again, I'm about 2 inches from my point right here, and I want to see, where does this green, we're just working one square, where does this green want to go? And I think that green wants to go again over onto the purple. You see that? Over onto the purple. So I'll put my needle down and I'll aim, holding that there in place, holding it here in place. It's covering my raw edges of my focal fabric. Just biting that green, shifting it till it's in front of me, securing it to the point, needle down, and then I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to finish this square. get rid of this point here. I can get rid of my pin. Now I have one final pale green curved frame. See how beautifully it rolls? See how beautifully that rolls over? And my focal fabric, all that raw edge is enclosed. So now I'm going to come back. I'm going to hold this here, not pulling anything. I'm going to come back on my stitching to that point, shift it slightly, and that green fabric there, because I've stitched that green down, this frame, this goes right over and covers that green frame there. Shift it ever so slightly. Come to this point here. Just put it right in front of me. And just stitch right to that point. Now it's at this point, it's at this time that I don't have to, I can continue. Okay, I can just continue. So what I'm going to do is here, let me just shift this actually. I think I'm just going to continue on this block here. I want to make sure, I just had done that willy-nilly. I'm just going to make sure that my focal fabric is nice and square on my, my frame fabric is nice and square on my block here, on my square. And then as you can see, this dark gray, my needle's down, so I can just figure out where I'm going to go. My needle's down right in that intersection there. And then I can just put my presser foot down, come to that point, sort of where my focal fabric begins. Just make sure everything is nice and flat, smoothed, and then I can just begin stitching. What a difference now, all of a sudden, as opposed to 20 minutes ago, with all of my solid colored frame fabrics, this is the point where your quilt's going to come alive, because all of your fabrics are showing now. All of your base fabrics, all of your focal fabrics, your frame fabric, it's coming alive now with all of these prints. Whereas before you're thinking, how in the world, what is it going to look like? So that's why I'm saying you really have to keep in mind your different fabric choices. Fabrics here. I think I want, oh, it's a beautiful one, but that's gold there. Again, I'm not trying to overthink this, but oh, I like this one. Oh, this is delightful. I keep going, oh, yeah, I like that one. My favorite color. So now, as you can see, I have pulled it a whole 5-inch square, okay? Because, and again, as I was showing you, if I just cut that straight in half on the diagonal, that it wouldn't go right to the end there, and then I'd have to lose 1/2 inch of my border, where my border goes, and I want this to go all the way to the end. So I'm just going to on the edge here, okay? I'm going to secure this. Let me get my pin over here. I'm going to secure that there, holding it, and I'm going to start rolling from the edge, okay? I'm going to roll from the edge, and I'm going to start right there at the edge, just like we did on the other curves. You see that? I'm going to cover that raw edge there, and I'm going to come, this time I'm stitching on the other side, but that's okay, I can do that. I'm going to leave my needle down, and I'm going to just twist slightly. And again, I'm not pulling anything. As you can see, my base fabric is laying nice and flat. I'm just holding my frame fabric. I'm covering the raw edges of my focal fabric. And again, I'm coming up to this point, and I'm going to figure out, where does my blue frame want to go? And I think right now that wants to go over onto the red frame. So I'm going to push that right over gently. Oh, it's so pretty. And I'm going to come to this point here, putting my needle down to secure it, shift it. Does this look hard? I don't know. It might look like it's hard, but it's not. It just has to. Is it for a beginner? Maybe not. But I don't think it's hard. You just have to make sure. You see where my hands are? My hands the whole time are holding and just flattening. That's all. It's not hard. So I'm going to come to that point there, where the point is. I'm going to shift it. You see how that raw edge is right nicely enclosed and rolled over. I'm going to roll that over. Take my pin out. Right off of my sewing machine, lumps and everything and all flappy bits, but oh, so pretty. So as you can see, it looks completely different than when I had just my bright solid frame fabrics. Remember, those frame fabrics have just been accent points now, and my focal fabric is just that, my focal. Now I have these extra bits hanging off, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to turn it over, and I'm just going to cut off right even with the edges. I'm going to cut off these bits here. Now, on the back side, as I was saying, we have these where the intersections begin. We have these lumps, okay? We want to get rid of these lumps of fabric where there are squares, okay? Right here, okay? So we'll just start concentrating on this right here. What we want to do is we want to pull that fabric, my focal fabric, my yellow, we're going to pull that out, and we're going to separate it from back here. We're going to separate. What we're wanting to do is, because we've stitched that down, okay, we've stitched around that frame, what we want to do is we want to grab this lump of seams right here, okay? That's right underneath of my yellow focal fabric, okay? I'm just going to grab that, and then making sure that I have that lump of seams, the 4 seams coming in, I'm just going to cut out a small little divot there, just a small divot about that big where the intersections are. Okay, and then I'm going to smooth that out, and as you see, I have a hole here, okay? And where's my better scissors here? I'm going to take my scissors, and I'm going to put it in the hole, what I just made, and as you can see, there's stitching there where my frame has been cut down. I'm going to just take the edge of my scissors here and tuck it right up there. I'm not touching my yellow fabric underneath there. I'm just going to go up there, and I'm just going to about 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch away from that yellow fabric there, I'm just going to cut away this lump of seams. Multicolored table topper, and I'm going to go over and I'm going to spritz that, and I'm going to press it really, really well on the top and the back. It's lovely and flat. There's no lumps, and it's beautiful explosion of multicolor coming from those three different fabrics that I've chosen. Now, what I always do is when I make something and I have to figure out my border fabric, I could just bind this, but I'm going to border it. I look back, I stand back myself. I stand back and I squint really, really hard, and I think, what is the first color in this multicolor, cacophony, kaleidoscope of colors? What color do I first see? And I first saw like a peachy pink. That's what I first saw. I first saw peachy pink. Somebody might see blue, somebody might see green, somebody might see red. So what I've done is, for my border, I have pulled this fabric here. I think I will be cutting 3-inch strips, maybe even 3.5-inch strips of this fabric here, and just making, I'm going to do my 2 long side borders here, and then put on my top and my back, my top and my bottom border. And then I'll be ready just to sandwich this and to quilt it. I'm ironing my top here. It's coming out really lovely. What I've done is I've spritzed it with a lot of water, because we've been messing about and folding fabrics and stretching fabrics, and so what I've done is I've spritzed it with water. Now you might be, if you're new to this look, you might be saying, well, you haven't stitched down this area here. What in the world? Why is that hanging up free there? Well, that's either the look you like to make it like textural, and yes, it does sort of stand out. Well, I'm pressing it down right now, or if you wanted to, by all means, if you wanted to, if that bothers you to have this frame sort of standing up proud here, you can go back, take a million years, if you wanted to, and you could stitch this inner curve right down. But I think that's the whole beauty of this lovely runner. As you can see, I'm pressing it down, but with sort of use, it will sort of pop up. Not to the point of impeding anything being put on it, if you're going to be putting a centerpiece or something on it. But because you'd put a centerpiece on this one. This is my center square. So if I had a candle or flower arrangement, I'd be putting it on there. And obviously, that's not going to impede the functionality of your runner. Here's my little quilt top with my borders put on it. And now I'm going to just sandwich it and quilt it. So I've backed and batted and sandwiched my quilt top, ready to be quilted. And I was debating on how I wanted to quilt this. And as I said before, I think I'm just going to do a straight line in my ovals here. That will dissect the quilt. And that means with this quilt, I will be quilting about every 4 to 5 inches or so. And the batting that I have chosen, which is 100% cotton, I can quilt that far apart. I've just finished my table runner, my mock Cathedral Windows table runner, and this is the fabric I chose for the binding. I decided to go with a multicolor stripe because, again, it's a multicolor inside here, plain, and then a multicolor stripe. I like this. This has all of the colors that are in the body of my quilt. So I thought, instead of a solid, I will put on a stripe. And I did round my corners like I always do. And I machine bound it. I machine my binding to the back, and then I turn it over to the front. I use a 2 1/4 inch binding. So yeah, there is my finished lovely little multicolor mock cathedral windows topper. Hope my husband doesn't take this one. He came in with my other one. He was like, oh, I like that so much. So he has to take that back to his office. But there's my lovely little topper. I like it. It's not a quick project, but it's not a hard project. So again, all the best, and hope you enjoyed this. Love from the Trueloves. All right, folks. Bye.